I just wanted to introduce an idea. And the idea is following. We lost paradise when we ate from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, right? That's in the Bible. What is the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil? I would argue the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil is morality. That's the idea. So again, it's just an introduction to a few ideas, concepts basically, that I'm going to work with in further videos. So, why did we lose paradise? Because we ate from that tree of good and evil, which fruit is morality. What does morality do? Morality makes a distinction between good and evil, right or wrong, good or bad, What do I respect? What do I disrespect? That's pretty much what morality is all about. And morality is a judgment. It's a verdict, If I say something is good, that's a judgment, it's a verdict. And if I say something is good, then something else must be bad. So good alone doesn't make sense. Good makes only sense in distinction to bad. Respect only makes sense in distinction to something that I don't respect, so disrespect, right? So morality is like a sword, cutting the world into half, saying this is good, this is bad. This I respect, this I disrespect. What's the problem with that? Well, if you look at any conflict in the world, I don't name names, there are enough conflicts in this world, Usually there are two sides of these conflicts, right? And every conflict is saying, we're the good people. We are right. We need respect. We deserve respect. These are savages, they are bad people. And whoever you ask, whatever conflict you take, every side of every conflict is identifying with the good side. We deserve respect, we're the good people, we're just doing this because the other people are evil and we have to destroy evil, yada, 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 There you have your problem. So if you ask what is the problem with morality, separation is the problem with morality. One-sidedness is the problem with morality. Because if you make a distinction between good and bad, good or evil, respect, disrespect, if you make a moral judgment, you're always excluding people and you're always demonizing people. So you're glorifying your own side usually and you're demonizing the other side. Good is not existing on itself. Good does only make sense in distinction to bad, right? So you cut the world in half and you say, this is the light side, this is the dark side. Good, bad, good, evil, respect, disrespect. There you have the problem with morality. That's why we were kicked out of paradise, when we ate the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And I would argue the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil is morality, which is counterintuitive because usually, especially if you're religious, right, we're the good people, right? Counterintuitive. But is it true that, if you're always the good people, as I said, you cannot have good alone. Good only makes sense if there's the other side, which is bad. And if you're the good people and they're the evil people, and you think the good people have to destroy the evil people, all hell breaks loose. That's the problem with morality. And that's, for my arguing, for my reasoning behind this, the reason why we lost paradise when we ate from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, which fruit, I would argue, is morality. That's the problem with morality. So how do we get back to paradise? That's the question. How do we get out of this mess? Maybe we should distance ourselves from morality and moral judgment. That's what I would argue. Usually you got morality, which is the verdict, it's moral judgment. And then you have ethics, for example. Ethics is all about, there are many different ways to understand ethics, but usually ethics is understood as the reasoning, the logical, philosophical reasoning behind the moral judgment. So you say, you make a moral judgment, good, bad, respect, disrespect, right? And then you use ethics as the reasoning behind. So I say we're the good people because da 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 da, and I say these are the bad people because da 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 da. So you can work with ethics. I would say ethics is fantastic, is a step in the right direction, because it distances yourself. You distance yourself from your moral judgment. If you just have moral judgment alone, that's fundamentalism, basically, right? That's fanaticism. Fanaticism, is that the right word? That's fanatic, that's totally one-sided. It's a moral judgment alone, super bad in itself, right? Which is interesting, because when I say morality is bad, that again is a moral judgment. So I would say morality is dysfunctional because it creates separation. It always makes the distinction between good and bad. And of course, if you're the good people, someone's going to come along and tell you that you have to destroy the bad people. No paradise there, that's for sure. So taking one step away from your moral judgment is ethics. Why do you judge this way or that way? But you're still connected to the moral judgment, right? If you do it like that. A different form, a different way to use ethics or to understand ethics, or a different approach altogether, would be, according to Niklas Luhmann and systems theory. So you're not using ethics to justify a moral judgment, but you're using ethics to understand how something works. And then it's no longer about morality, but about functionality. And that's what I would argue is a good chance, a good approach to go back to paradise. So not by destroying the evil people and then we're all good people and yay. That's horrible. That's just horrible. It goes deeper and deeper into one-sidedness, into morality, into moral judgment, into destruction, right? So whatever you use your ethics for, whatever your reasoning behind might be, if it's connected to moral judgment, you're still very destructive, right? So how do we get back away from that, back into paradise? And the idea would basically, there's morality on the one hand. Morality kicks us out of paradise. What brings us back is functionality. So instead of asking, is it good or bad? And instead of asking, why is it good or bad? Can we just ask, how does it work? What does it do? If you say it's good or bad, then you have moral judgment. But if you say it's functional or dysfunctional in regard to whatever, is it constructive or is it deconstructive? Do I create something, or do I destroy something? Functionality is more concerned, or primarily concerned, with the question, how does it work? What does it do? Is it functional or constructive, or is it destructive? Does it build something, or does it destroy something? And I would argue morality is not bad. That would be a moral judgment. But morality is dysfunctional in the sense that it's destructive. You know? I'm probably going too far here, you know, too much information already. But I'm just trying to introduce an idea here. There's morality. That's what I would say is the reason why we were kicked out of paradise. Then there's ethics, and you can use ethics to justify your moral judgment, but then you're just ending up in moral judgment anyway. So no help there. Maybe a little bit better than just morality alone, but if you use ethics to justify your moral judgment, you end up in morality and moral judgment. Might be a little better, might be what the whole Enlightenment movement came up with, Kant and Hume and all these wonderful people, whether you're more on leaning towards Immanuel Kant, or whether you're more in utilitarianism. There are whole theories about how to use ethics and what ethics to use, but ultimately, if you use ethics to justify a moral judgment, you're ending up in morality, which is problematic, right? The reason why we were kicked out of paradise. So if you decouple ethics from moral judgment, you end up in a total different direction. Namely, there's a trinity here, you know, not just a duality, but a trinity. That's super interesting too. So you end up with functionality. Not is it good or bad, like in morality. Not why is it good or bad, like in conventional ethics. But what does it do? How does it work? That's functionality. And could that be a way back to paradise? That's the interesting, I think, very, very interesting idea I would like to explore. And this is just a video to introduce you to that idea. Okay? So I would love to read your comments and your thoughts about this. See you soon. I'm going to make a video about this. I'm going to think about this further, and I'm going to explore this idea with you together. Namo Buddhaya. See you soon.